All right, and looks like we are live. So I'd like to say hello and welcome everyone once again to the Rebellion. I'm Joshua, your host per usual. You might know me better as Gravantis online. And I am pleased to introduce a new feature to the channel. I'm calling every idle word because every word you say matters in the end. Hope to make it a regular feature where I sit down with someone, talk about like a variety of subjects. Enough about me. Today I'm joined with my good friend Luke Kendrat, a seminarian at Holy Trinity Orthodox Monastery in Jordanville, New York. So, thanks again for coming on. A special thanks to Vladika Luke. I don't know if he's going to watch this, but he blessed Luke to come on and kind of talk about the seminary and kind of what goes into becoming a priest. So, kind of the format for the stream is we're gonna talk for a while, and at the very end, gonna open it up to anyone watching if they want to ask Luke a question. There's a Ko-fi link in the description if you want to donate. Half all proceeds will go to support the monastery, but otherwise, I'll just read from the chat. So thanks again for coming on. Some of you may know Luke already. He had a bit of an online presence before he went to seminary. In fact, last time we streamed together, I was on your show.
That's
So
right.
now I'm the internet personality. You're in seminary, so downgrade for me.
Wow, it happened. I just, goodness gracious, I'm glad to be here. So thanks for having me on tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for someone who, this is the first time they're seeing you, if you could introduce yourself, who's Luke?
Sure, absolutely. Actually, before we get going here, is it all right if we start off with a prayer?
Oh yeah, no,
And
absolutely.
sure,
Go
all
right
right, let's
ahead.
do it. Got these icons right here, so we'll pray to them. O heavenly King, comfort your spirit of truth, who art everywhere present and fillest all things, treasury of good things and giver of life, come and dwell in us, and cleanse us of all impurity, and save our souls, O good one.
Amen.
So, I mean, again, thanks for having me on, and yeah, it's good to be here. It's good to be here in Jordanville, first off, and on here with you. So, a little about myself. Most people, I'm sure, watching know somewhat of a little bit of my show that I had before, and know that I had to stop all of my internet activity and come here. So, I am a second-year seminarian at Holy Trinity Orthodox Seminary in Jordanville, New York, and I am a former niche internet micro celebrity, I guess, is what we can comfortably call it. And this is where I'm at right now, and year 2 of the bachelor's program, and looking forward to continuing. And we'll see what happens. God willing, staying for the master's program. We'll see what goes on with that. So.
Awesome. Tell us a little about yourself. Just a quick rundown. Who Luke is, your year, what you're all doing at seminary at the moment.
Sure. So I came to seminary in the fall of 2021, and it was something that I had been kind of discerning for a long time and figuring out when to do it, when would be the best time, how to go about it, which seminary to go to, because there are obviously a couple of different options in the U.S., less so for the undergraduate programs, a little bit more options for master's students. But all of that, I was taking into account. I was talking with my spiritual father and trying to work all this out. And so I decided on Jordanville, on Holy Trinity. And I came here in the fall of 2021. And the classes, it was pretty straightforward. We had Russian and Slavonic right off the bat, which is certainly necessary as a seminarian in the Russian Church abroad, because there's such a large contingency of Russian speakers, native Russians, people who come from Russia itself to America, or Russians who were born here, who were brought up in Russian culture. It's necessary to know the language and to be able to interact to some degree with a lot of these Russian speakers. And the Slavonic language, of course, the services here are about 75% Slavonic, 25% English. That's kind of the balance that we like to keep it at. And so kind of working with that, we have immediately our Russian and Slavonic classes. We had an intro to theology class my first year, wherein we read the Law of God, and it was a fantastic read. And then we had an English class, did some classic literature. and just very basic introductory courses like that. And we had liturgics, choir, all of those sorts of things. And it helped a lot, for someone especially. A lot of people might know that I came originally from the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, and that played a role, especially in how well I was doing in choir and in liturgics, because coming from the Greek Church, the liturgics are extremely different.
Mm-hmm.
And so it helped to kind of have a bit of a rundown with Father Nicholas Kotar. I'm sure you're familiar with him.
Yes.
Online. He's got a nice presence online. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he's watching this right now, so I'm willing to watch what I say. No, I'm kidding. But he's a great instructor, and I love his class. I love him as a person. And he helped a lot in terms of how quickly I was able to learn the liturgics here. I'm still obviously learning a lot, but how quickly, more so, I guess, I was able to get used to it, because like I said, in the Greek Church, things are very different. And during the services, the melodies we sing obviously are based on the Kievan tones, which is something that you don't have anything remotely close to in the Greek Church. The Byzantine melodies are very different. And I've had my fair share of disagreements with many of the students and the faculty here as far as that goes. You'd be surprised, though. A lot of us here really like Byzantine music, and it's nice that every now and then we have an opportunity to do it. And so, but getting used to all of that was kind of the essence of my first year, adjusting to life here, living what is essentially a quasi-monastic life, and getting used to these very different surroundings in upstate New York. It's always freezing cold up here. You got, man, oh man, you got winter like I've never seen it. I shouldn't say never. I was born in Syracuse, but I didn't live there for very long. But regardless, here it's a very specific, very unique climate, and that's something that took some getting used to. So one of our obediences, as I'm sure you can imagine, as seminarians, is shoveling the snow. And so we have plenty of time to do that. But it's been great, and just adjusting to everything, getting used to very different surroundings, and meeting some wonderful people. I have made an incredible group of friends here. One thing about dorm life is you live so close to everyone all the time that, of course, you have your moments where things get on your nerves, or you start. It's very easy, to let things bother you. But at the end of the day, there's this recognition that you're all brothers, and that's something that I came to the realization of last year. I remember I was talking with Father Theodore Stanway, who is the Dean of Students, and I remember telling him, I was in the car with him driving him somewhere, and I was saying, it's nice because, we have our little feuds or little spats every now and then with all the guys in the dormitory, but at the end of the day, we know that we love each other, and, this is, we believe that we are all working towards something that is bigger than ourselves, working towards something that is ultimately for the glory of God. And in doing that, we understand that we need to help each other continually on the path to salvation, and it's not going to happen if we're always, fighting and getting mad at each other. And so it's nice, to have that understanding, and most of the time we all just get along swimmingly in there, and it's really been a great experience. And like I said, meeting some wonderful people and making some wonderful friends. It's been an experience that I'm going to take with me for the rest of my life. So all of that has kind of been what has encompassed my first year and a half here. Learning liturgics, a very different style of singing, basic theology, Russian, Slavonic, and meeting some wonderful people and having those great experiences and making those great friendships.
That's awesome. So you had mentioned you grew up in the church, correct?
Yes.
So share a little with us about your relationship with the church and faith. Growing up, did church and faith play a big role throughout your life? Did you ever have a falling away moment? You're kind of like lax, and then something re-inspired you, or just tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I grew up in the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, and my mother would take me to church every Sunday. She was very adamant about that, and I can't thank God enough for that. And I'm fully convinced that it's through her prayers, through and my father's prayers as well, through my yaya's prayers, my grandmother, and through the prayers of the nuns at Skepi, Holy Protection Monastery down in Pennsylvania, in Whitehaven. That's the only reason that I'm here, because these are people who really took my spiritual life seriously, especially at times when I didn't. I did, have a bit of a falling away moment, especially in high school. I wasn't exactly as focused on the faith as I am now, although obviously still struggling constantly and working towards towards a more serious spiritual life at all times. But this is something that in high school I didn't take it as seriously, because you have all of these distractions. You want to be on the football team, you want to be running track, you're checking out girls and everything. These are things that normal high school men go through, and that's something where I really had to struggle after I graduated high school to come back, because I realized a couple of personal events happened in my life, and I realized that, look, this is my rock. The faith is what I have as my rock. This is what my belief system is based on. This is what matters the most to me. And I fell back in love with the services, and they had that renewed sort of brightness to me that I think they had lost while I was not really attending church as much, not taking it as seriously. And so I think that as time went on and I became more and more engrossed in the services of the church and going with my mom and with my sisters, it started to revitalize that fire inside of me. That's one thing, Protestants, they like to say that you're on fire for the Lord. And a lot of people think that's kind of a cringe saying. I can understand that, but I'd be lying if I said I hadn't used that, to describe how I started feeling, when I came back. It really was like just this fire burning inside of me, and I was like, I've got to be in church. I've got to be doing this, and I love it. And there's nothing that I want to be doing more. I started researching like crazy and reading probably more than I should have been at the time, and getting into guys like Jay Dyer and trying to figure out kind of where I stand on certain theological issues, and then actually talking with Metropolitan Jonah down in Virginia was a huge help, because he kind of grounded me a little bit and brought me back, and he was one who encouraged me to go to seminary. I talked to him about it, and he told me, he said, look, this looks like something that you could do that would really benefit you, and I think that no matter what happens, the experience is going to be extremely beneficial to you in your life, and it's going to be something that you take with you forever. And so having that sort of a conversation with him, it made me realize, this is what I'm meant to do. So kind of coming from that Greek background and being raised in the church, and understanding as a child the significance of the services, understanding why we go to church, why we receive the Eucharist, and all of these things, it helped to give that foundation for me, so that when I did come back to the church, I had a general idea of what I was returning to. I had an idea of the significance and of the importance, and how this is something that determines every facet of our lives. This is the most important aspect of our lives, is our faith. And that's when I started to kind of come up with this concept of, orthodoxy first, and what exactly that means to me, and why I chose that, and kind of obviously piggybacking off of the idea of America first, and that general concept of putting your nation first, but instead we're putting our faith first and before everything else, because that's what I cherish so dearly. So all of that played a role, and having a father who is Protestant, as I'm sure many of you know, it helped for me to want to look into all of this more sincerely, because I had questions. He had questions that needed answering. And so I thought to myself, all right, look, I want to be able to figure this out for myself and make sure that this is something that I really believe in and understand as much as I can. And so, when my dad and I would have discussions, I wanted to be able to make sure that they were educated, that they were real, and that I could actually present him with a defense of the Orthodox faith. So
That's great. And growing up, did you ever kind of think of yourself ever going to seminary, or was it really just kind of a late in life sort of inspiration?
Yeah, so it's something that I definitely, probably when I was around 8 years old, I first thought to myself, wow, seminary would be really cool. I think it was actually after I visited St. Tikhon's, OCA, Monastery / Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania, and I was like, wow, this is a really nice environment. These monks here, it's cool. Having them all around, and the idea of being a seminarian, it really appealed to me. Constantly being in church and praying and studying. I was like, this is what praying and studying are things that should be going together anyway. And so after kind of having that experience, I saw St. Tikhon's, I saw Holy Cross / Hellenic College a lot growing up. Obviously, I have family who are over there, and so seeing these two examples, I was like, this is definitely something that I want to do in my life. Again, when I kind of fell away a little bit from the faith, I remember having a distinct moment. I don't know if, I'm sure a lot of the chat is familiar with medieval Total War, the second one in particular. Yeah, so of course I was playing as the Byzantine Empire, naturally, and I was moving the priests around on the map, and I remember like looking there, because what you can do in the game is you know, when you play as either Russia or the Byzantine Empire, you can convert whole sections to Orthodoxy. And I remember seeing that bar go up after every turn, like, you know, 80% Orthodox, 90% Orthodox. And I was like, this is really cool. Like, and seeing the priests traveling in their vestments and everything. But I remember having a moment thinking to myself, like, I don't, you know, if I want to do this, if this is something that's real to me, I don't want it to be just because I like the aesthetics. And that was a thought to me back then when I was in, I don't know, 10th grade. And I was like, you know, the rest of it just, it doesn't appeal to me. It's so much, you know, prayer, it's so much work, and I have other things that I need to worry about, you know, like the football game this Friday night. And so, you know, of course, I was a little distracted teenage boy, and I had no idea what was in store for me. And so I was like, well, maybe there's just something else that I want to do that I can dedicate my life to as much. So I considered the military for a long time. Two of my best friends in high school were really big into the military. Both of their parents had been their fathers rather had been in the military, and so I was like, that seems like something I could dedicate myself to, you know, being in the Marine Corps or something. And so I really bought into it for a while, and then I was like, well, that doesn't seem like it's for me. Maybe I could go, you know, study biology and like go to med school or something like that. I don't know. I just like throwing out these crazy options. And then I got to college, and I was like, nah, no, you know, it's not biology. I don't like this. You know, I don't want to be a surgeon. I don't want to. So I ended up, of course, eventually making my way here, like I told you, and it's been nothing but magical ever since then. And there's so much grace that's here, and there are moments where it's very easy to have doubts, and I've had doubts a lot since I've been here, where I've thought to myself, God, you know, I can't. This is a lot, and I can't do this, you know. But that's when you need to start praying the most. That's when I've talked to, you know, Vladika, and I've, you know, really gotten some excellent advice from him. And having that opportunity and that ability to kind of recenter on prayer and on fasting here and remember why I'm here has been so critical to me. Having that guidance from Vladika, from Father Theodore, it's just been really wonderful. And it's helped like crazy for me to remember why I'm here in the first place and what my goal is, what the end goal is, where I see myself, and what I'd like to do with my life and how I can best glorify God. So
That's great. That's awesome. And this is something that always interests me on a personal level, especially for converts. Kind of choosing a patron saint is oftentimes a difficult issue, where either it's
all right. So, oops, that's some background.
Okay, no worries.
There we go.
Where it's either, you know, I don't know who to choose, or I'm stuck between like two saints, whose name am I going to take?
Sure.
But kind of when you're born into the church and you're baptized as a baby, you don't really have that luxury of decision. So, who's your patron saint?
Saint Luke the Evangelist.
Oh, very nice.
And yes, the same actually as Bishop Luke. And we, you know, when I first met him, that's kind of what we bonded over, obviously. And he mentioned it to me, and I was like, you know, that's really cool, because he's Bishop Luke, named after Saint Luke the Evangelist, and he's the, you know, technically the Bishop of Syracuse. So he's Bishop Luke of Syracuse. I was born in Syracuse, and I was like, oh yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a connection there. And so, you know, we talked about that right away. And I remember one time actually when I was still first year, I got like mail. I had ordered something for my room, like these little clips, you know, like the chip clips for like chip bags, and he like thought it was for him because it came to the mailroom and it said Luke, and he's like, oh, you know, it opens it up and he's like, oh, this isn't mine, and like I was like, so yeah, we've had moments, but it's yeah. So Saint Luke, especially since I've been here, it's been nice to be able to pray to him and to talk to him for guidance. He was a physician, of course, and you know, that's something that I was pursuing for a little while, like I mentioned, getting into some sort of medical field. And so I talked to him then, and I talk to him now probably more than ever. I've got a nice big icon of him up in my room, and I love to just sit there and talk with him and go over things from my day with him and kind of just ask for his guidance and support, because I sit here and I'm like, I need a lot of help, you know, and I need it from all of the saints and angels, and I need it from the Mother of God and from Christ himself. And so having that saint who I've really started to develop a close personal relationship with has been really beneficial. And I think that I've really tried to, as much as possible, walk in his footsteps, as hard of a task as that is. But I think that's what we're all called to do when we receive, you know, our baptismal names and our patron saints. We're called to live as closely to their lives as we can, to emulate them in every way that we can. And I think, if you had asked me when I was in 6th or 7th grade, I might have told you I wanted St. Constantine, because I started researching Roman history, and I was like, oh man, this guy is built different, But no, I'm really happy that it is St. Luke, and that I have this opportunity to relate to him and to talk to him any chance I get. So,
is there anything in particular, either in his life, or obviously he wrote the gospel and then Acts,
right.
is there anything in particular that you think that really stands out to you, that if you had to choose like one thing that really inspires you about his life, what would it be?
It's his devotion to the Mother of God, and the fact that, of course, according to our records, he painted the first icon of the Mother of God, and that's something that's near and dear to my heart. I try to do a paraklesis here every day, which, for those who don't know, that's the supplicatory canon to the Theotokos. I try to do one every day when I'm here, if possible. Some days, obviously, are harder than others to do it because of work and obediences and whatever else, but as much as possible, that's a service that's always been near and dear to my heart. And it's a service that I grew up listening to it as a child in my crib at my yaga's house. She'd have it playing on this little cassette tape, and from the monks at Simonopatra Monastery in Manathos. And so I grew up listening to this, and so having that specific service and praying that as much as possible, it reminds me of my access to the Mother of God and the fact that she's always there interceding for us, which brings me back to St. Luke and his devotion to her, and the fact that the Magnificat is in the Gospel of Luke. And that's actually, for my Slavonic class, that's what for that semester, that was the project that I did, was translating from Slavonic into English, like a word-for-word translation of the Magnificat as accurately as possible. Great, now my Slavonic professor's probably going to see this, but I kind of tried to work around it a little bit, and I pulled it up in Greek, so I had the text in modern Greek and in Kina Greek, and then I had it in Slavonic, and I was like, all right, here's a nice little workaround, and I tried to figure it out that way. And then, whole other story. I thought I was so smart, but so having that service to pray it as frequently as possible, and reminding myself that this was a devotion that St. Luke had too, where he was very dedicated to the Mother of God, to conveying her story in the gospel. And that reminds me, where it's like, I must have that same devotion as well. I must have that same level of devotion, understand that she is the one interceding constantly for us, right before God. And especially the end of the Paraklesis service during the Dormition fast, there's that separate, the Sviatilin, the Exapostellaria for the feast, is so beautiful at the end of the Paraklesis, and the words there, and even the Byzantine, specifically Father Nicholas, the Byzantine melody. I love it because it's just it really is moving. And I chanted it this past summer with a friend of mine at Holy Protection Monastery, and just like hearing those words and how devoted the apostles were to her. And it's just that's something that I've really carried with me. And again, relating that to St. Luke and the fact that he had that devotion to her as well. So.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, the Proclasis, it even has that line mentioning about Luke painting the first icon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's from the very end. The Megalinaria. That's what is said. The icon, the directress, which was depicted for us by Luke the Evangelist. I always read that, and just little goosebumps running down my body, and I love it.
So, what's the process like for going to seminary and applying? If someone was interested, how would they go about that?
So it's a very simple, straightforward process, very similar to any other college that you might have applied to in the past. I remember it being a little bit easier even than when I was applying to other universities, and more worth my time in the end. But it's something you can look up. Let me actually see if I can access it here. Should we maybe put it in the live chat real quick? The link to apply. It's a very straightforward process, and forgive me, I've been developing a little bit of a cough these past couple of days, but a very straightforward process, and it's something that anyone who's interested can take a look at. It's just about, it basically, it requests your transcripts. You are requested to write an essay. There are a couple of interviews involved. It's very straightforward. Let's see here if I can grab it.
I think you should be able to share your screen if you want to.
I would, but I am a boomer, and I'm afraid. I'm afraid. All right. Let's see. So, yeah, it's a very straightforward process, and it's something that took me maybe a couple of months in total to apply and to hear back. So it shouldn't be an issue for anyone who's interested. And again, it's a very standard what you would expect. So submitting a picture, giving your transcripts, a little bit about yourself, family history type of thing, and you'll hear back rather quickly from admin. So
Awesome. And are there different programs at Jordanville that people might want to, if they have a certain focus, or is it kind of a general program everyone takes, and maybe like specialization?
So there's the undergraduate program, which is the 4-year Bachelor's of Theology, and it's the same course across the board for first years, second years, third years, and fourth years. We all all first years take the same classes, all second years, all third years, and all fourth years. The MDiv program as well, first years it's going to take the same classes, second years and third years. It's a 3-year program. And they're working on some sort of an accelerated program right now as well. So if you did the bachelor's program here, then you have a shortened master's program because the class is kind of the carryover from the classes that you will have taken previously. So then other than that, there's a certificate of theology program, which we have, I believe, 1 or 2 students enrolled in right now. And that entails some different courses more specific to philosophy and things like that, not as focused on the Russian language or the Slavonic language. And so that's more some people's cup of tea. But for the formation, there's nothing quite like the bachelor's program. I have really appreciated every minute of my time here and tried to use it to the fullest. So, again, with the master's program, it's very enticing, for someone who might want to finish their master's degree a little bit quicker after they finish their bachelor's. It's something that I've considered. I think I mentioned at the beginning of the stream. If God wills, for me to stay here, I'm not sure exactly what my master's program is going to entail yet. I really have no idea. There are obvious benefits to being here as a master's student who has also gone through the bachelor's program. One of my best friends, actually, John, he's currently doing that. He graduated last year from the bachelor's program, and this year he's in the master's program, and he's loving it. So there are benefits to it, absolutely. I am not sure what I want to do for a master's degree yet. There are a couple of different options that I've thrown around in the air, and so we'll see. But generally, I've heard it's a solid program, and people here have a lot of wonderful things to say about it and about the certificate program as well. So,
Are there any particular classes that have stood out to you so far that left a lasting impression for you? They're like, I'm always going to remember this.
Yes. So this semester, actually, Father Daniel Franzen, he's a professor who was here a couple of years ago, and he recently returned. He graduated from the MDiv program here a couple of years ago. I don't know exactly how many now. But Father Daniel has been, both he himself and his class have been extremely influential in my life. And Father Daniel is a former United States Marine Corps officer. He was a Mustang, so he went in as an enlisted guy and then ended up working his way up to the rank of officer. And he was, I believe, an MP. I'm not entirely sure. But regardless, he's got that intensity. And he commands your attention in the classroom, which is something that I think all teachers and all professors desire. The minute that he walks in, conversation in the room stops. The room falls dead silent. You stand up, say the prayer, and sit back down, and class begins. And that's just how it goes. A lot of people here say that I modeled my goatee after him, which is not true. I've wanted to do this look for a while. It's not true. But maybe he played a role in inspiring me to do it now. I don't know. But regardless, he's a wonderful man, a wonderful priest. And having his influence has been helpful, not only for me, but for a lot of the seminarians here. Probably my very best friend here, he is very close with Father Daniel as well. And he is in his office hours all the time, whether it's to ask him something that pertained to class or something just about life in general. He's always talking to him, and Father Daniel's always there. And it's just great to have someone who's that dedicated to the priesthood, to being a professor here at the seminary, and to the Orthodox life in general. To have that example for a young man, especially a young seminarian, is extremely important. And it's something that you're not going to get anywhere else. There's no second Father Daniel. And that's something where his class, which he teaches church history, and dogmatics, but dogmatics is a third-year course. So I take his second-year church history class. And having that, church history has always been one of my very favorite subjects. My father is a history teacher. He teaches American history. But regardless, that concept of just reading about history, having these stories told to me, it's always fascinated me. And so having my favorite subject in seminary taught by such a wonderful professor has been really nice for me. And it's made me remember, that God willing, maybe that's something I'd like to do someday, that I'd like to teach and have a class as captivated as he has the class at all times. It's something that, like I said, teachers and professors can dream of, and something that they all hope for. And he just manages to just bring everyone in, and we're all focused, we're all learning, and that's something that's going to stick with me forever. Just having that example of a priest and of a man is really wonderful. And so that's been great. And beyond that, I think beyond a class that's been particularly influential for me, the atmosphere on Kledos, on the singing in choir, on Sundays, on Saturday nights and Sundays, and on feast days. We're allowed to go any day of the week, to go to Kledos, but most of the time I go on Saturday nights, Sundays, and on feast days to sing. And that environment has been wonderful. Father Nicholas Kotar is the greatest director that I've ever worked with. He's magnificent. I mean, he knows the services like the back of his hand. The man is a wellspring of knowledge, and it's important to utilize him as best as you can while you're here. And that's one thing that I've tried to do as much as possible. Not only is he extremely outgoing and willing to encourage you to sing, but he is also so passionate about what he does, and you can see it, that this is what he loves, and he loves directing, and he loves singing, and my goodness, he has a beautiful voice. And so just having that inspiration on Kledos, when I'm going to sing, when I'm trying my best to learn these new tones and this new style of liturgics, having that encouragement has been really, really nice. And he knows my background, he knows what I come from, he knows that I come from the Greek church, and he works with that. We did a couple of things for Three Holy Hierarchs. That's the one service where Vladika graciously allows Byzantine chant. And so I went up to him and I said, look, I have a slew of requests here, Father Nicholas. I have things I want to do. And he said, okay, we can work with that. And so we picked a couple of things to do. And I transposed the Psalm 135, the second part of the Polielos, from Byzantine notation into Western notation. And I was able to get his approval for that. So we did it for Three Holy Hierarchs, which was really cool. And the fact that he was willing to work with me like that, that's something that you're not going to find with a lot of professors or with a lot of directors. It's kind of, it's always like, my way or the highway, we're doing it like this. And to a degree, that's a good thing. And he does have that characteristic as well. But the idea of giving everyone that opportunity and wanting to work with everyone equally has just been really nice. And everyone's always happy to go sing, happy to go on Kledos. It's just a beautiful environment. So that's an experience that I will certainly take with me for the rest of my life. And having him in my life and being so influential. And he also is a passionate writer, as I'm sure you know. And I have not read his books yet. I would like to get around to it. I have such a list. Vladika just gave me the Count of Monte Cristo. Right? Yes. And he gave that to me to read. It's like a 600-page book, probably even more, actually. And he's like, you should read this. And then he also told me to read this book called Quo Vadis, which is like a historical fiction type of book about the life of St. Peter and the apostles after Christ's death. And so that's something that I really want to read as well. So I've got all these lists of books to read. So I'll get around to Father Nicholas's as well. But, it's just been really, really wonderful. And talking to him a little bit about writing, because that's something that I'm very passionate about too. I journal, and beyond that, I do some short stories and things like that. And so kind of running a couple of things by him has been really nice, and getting his approval and him kind of critiquing whatever else. It's been great. Just talking to him about all of these sorts of things. We have a lot of mutual interests, and I think that just having his general environment on Kledos and in the classroom has been really nice. So,
sounds like the faculty really helps contribute to the great atmosphere at Jordanville.
Absolutely, beyond a doubt.
And so you mentioned the sort of faculty members that inspire you. and what they may have inspired in you. Do you have a sort of end goal for seminary? I know most people, when they think of seminary, they think you're going to be a priest, but not necessarily, everyone who goes becomes a priest. Sort of, is that your intention, or are you kind of feeling it out still, or?
Whatever God wills. I don't know what direction my life is going to take. I've got a lot to figure out. And right now I'm just trying to pass, and I'm just trying to lead a spiritual life. There's one thing that Vlasica says that really resonates with me. He always says, if you can leave here with two things, then leave here with a habit of prayer and just a little bit of humility. And so I think that these are two things that before anything else, that's what I've got to work on. Because there are days where, the life here it's strict, right? I mean, it's not. There's a video out there called "Forged in Fire." I don't know if you've seen it. I don't know how many people have seen it. Which maybe I'll talk about a little bit later in the stream. It's not entirely accurate. We talk about redoing it and kind of. We brainstormed some ideas on what to do about that because it was made actually by people who did not attend the seminary, and so it's. They know a lot about the seminary and they grew up knowing about the seminary, but they didn't actually attend. So it gives this kind of very intense, almost boot camp sort of atmosphere to what life is like here at Jordanville. Now, it is strict, absolutely, but it's not, it's not OCS, right? We're not trained to be Marines, but it's very spiritual. It's very spiritual, and that's the key. That's the takeaway. And so one thing that I struggle with, and I think a lot of seminarians do, is, in the mornings we have to get up for 6 a.m. liturgy. And so we have the bell the little bell goes off at around 5:30 in the morning. We get up, we shower if we have to, or we just throw our cassocks on and go to liturgy. And there are mornings we can take 2 sleeping days a week, which is very nice. But other than that, we've got to be there. So Monday through Saturday, it's Divine Liturgy at 6 a.m. unless it's one of your sleeping days, and then Sunday Divine Liturgy at 9. So that's something where, for myself, there are mornings where I get up. And it's 5:30, and I'll sit there and I'm like, my bed is so comfy, and I'm so warm, and it's so cold outside, and there are 3 feet of snow on the ground, and I don't feel like getting up, and I don't feel like praying right now. I'm going to go back to bed, my nice, sweet dreams, and I can get up at 8 and go to class. And it's in moments like that where you need to have discipline. And that's something that I struggle with. And it's something that I'm sure a lot of my fellow seminarians struggle with, is having that discipline to say, this is, give or take, an hour and a half out of my morning. It's to go and glorify God, to participate in the liturgy, to be in the presence of Christ and his angels and saints. This is the biggest blessing on earth. These are years of my life that I'm never going to get back. And I need to take full advantage of this. Because never is there going to be a time again in my life, unless, some seminarians who choose to be monks, that I'm going to have this same opportunity, because the struggles and the stress of the world, it comes crashing in. And this is what I've heard. This is obviously not quite from personal experience, but from priests who have graduated. The struggles of the world come in, and it's very difficult to maintain that same type of a prayer rule. So this is the time where I must take advantage of that, where I must be disciplined, where I must say to myself that this is for the ultimate cause. This isn't just a cause bigger than myself. This is for the ultimate cause. This is something that is going to lead toward, God willing, my salvation. And when you look at it that way and you put it in that perspective and you see yourself around you, the icons that you should have on your wall of these saints who struggled so valiantly for the faith and were willing to give it all. Saints who were burned alive, saints who were crucified upside down, saints who underwent these horrible torments and tortures. And I can't even get out of my bed at 5:30 in the morning for a 6 a.m. liturgy, and we can sit here and talk all day long about these intense theological concepts and is origin, what's the church's perspective on origin, and trying to find, theosis and what exactly it is, and talk about all these wonderful things that are good to be talking about. But if we aren't praying, right, then none of that is of any use. And I think it was Saint Theophan the Recluse who said, if you pray truly, you are a theologian. And if you are a theologian, then you pray truly. So this sort of an idea where we need to constantly have as our focal point our prayer life. It's something that I greatly struggle with. And it's something that, where we get so wrapped up in the various distractions around us. Even though we're in a monastery, the demons find a way. Vladika says, each city has one demon that, kind of encircles the city and tempts people. Monasteries have hundreds. That's what he says. And so here we are, and we're trying to study, we're trying to pray, we're trying to attend the divine services, and constantly we're being attacked. That's how it works. And we need to build up the best defense that we can to these attacks, which, of course, is only going to come through prayer and through fasting. And there's nothing else. You can read all the books you want all day long, and it's just not going to help. And a prayer life is something that I must cultivate, and something that by the time I graduate from here, I want to have my, look back and say, wow, I tried, I really did it. And I put all my effort into my praying, and I feel like I have grown spiritually, and I'd like to move forward with this, newfound sort of prayer rule that I have in my life, and this newfound respect for prayer. And if I'm wasting all my time on my phone, if I'm wasting all my time with my nose in my books, well, of what benefit is it to me at the end of the day? So prayer is of utmost importance, and that's what we all try to work on here, and that's the general idea of the life that we try to cultivate while we're here. So
I know you mentioned the icons and sort of the saints who've gone through these horrible tortures, and me personally, it's like at the end of the day, I'm too tired, and then I see the icon of Christ crucified. I'm like, okay, this is like 10 minutes. How many? Oh, did I lose you? Oh, no, okay, just switch. Okay, yeah, how long have I been on Twitter today? I've been on for, just mindlessly scrolling, I can't even take out, 10, 15, 20 minutes to pray. And I think that really helps put things into perspective. Because time is valuable, that's that one thing you're never going to get back.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And so you mentioned a little bit the kind of 6 a.m., Divine Liturgy. What does the rest of your day at seminary look like?
Yeah, so we get up most mornings, 6 a.m. We have liturgy. Then for most of us, classes start at 8, and they go until, give or take, 12 p.m. And then we have lunch. We all eat lunch together, and all the monks and the seminarians. And then the rest of the day, generally speaking, is ours. So we study, we hang out with our friends, we have a gym here in the dormitory that we go to, we work out. I run the calisthenics club at school, which meets every Tuesday and Saturday. Excuse me. And so we do all of these sorts of activities. There are a couple of other clubs, like a literature club, a Russian culture club, things like that seminarians are actively involved in. And so we have time throughout our day to do that. At 4 p.m. every day, or 3:30 if there's a polielos, there's Vespers and Matins, which seminarians do not have to go to unless they're assigned to Kletos for that week. You always have 2 seminarians who are assigned every day, 2 seminarians, and the schedule updates every week. So unless you're assigned, you don't have to go. But it's encouraged to go at least once a week, and to go and just kind of experience it and pray, and that's something that I myself need to work on and get there more often, because it is beautiful when you go, and it's long, it's 2.5 to 3 hours, but it's worth it. And you always leave feeling refreshed. That's the bottom line. You feel, okay, I've prayed, feel good, I can move on with my day. So provided that you don't go, generally, the next service that seminarians are attending is either small compline, which is right after dinner. Dinner's at 7. Small compline is at 7:20, 7:25, give or take. And that goes until about 8 p.m. And then after that is evening prayers. So if you went to small compline, you don't have to go to evening prayers. But if you didn't go to small compline, you have to go to evening prayers. Evening prayers is 10 minutes. And you go in the dormitory chapel, and you say your prayers with Father Theodore, who leads them, and several seminarians are in attendance. And you read the evening prayers from the Jordanville prayer book, and then you go up to your room, and generally that's about it for the night. That's around 8:30, 9 o'clock is when life in the dormitory is starting to settle down. Everyone's kind of in their rooms, doing their own thing. They're reading, finishing up their last bit of studying, watching a movie, whatever, which Politica would not encourage, but, whatever you're, doing in your room, and then that's about it. And then you get up the next day and you do it all over again. So the ideal is to have these sort of repetitive days where you're doing similar things in each day, so that you are able to cultivate both a prayer life and a regimented life. And that's ultimately the goal and what we all try to accomplish. So, as much as possible, we like to live similar days and make sure that our main focus is the divine services, and that we are constantly keeping God at the forefront of our minds and keeping our prayer at the forefront of our minds. So
And you mentioned the monks earlier. For those unaware, the Jordanville Seminary is also attached to Holy Trinity Monastery. Can you talk a little bit about the interaction between the monks and the seminarians?
Sure, yeah. We see the monks all the time. It's not like some foreign concept. It's like, whoa, you're just like looking at some exhibit in like a zoo. It's not like, oh, there are monks here. We all know there are monks here. Father Theodore Stanway is the dean of students. He lives in the dormitory, and I'm sure that he could tell you some stories about that. But he is very closely intertwined with our lives and very involved. And I have built a very good relationship with him, and he's been nothing but a help to me in my spiritual life, in my academic life, everything. He's actually who I would like to, if possible, have advised my thesis, but we'll see. But the monks are very involved in general. So the monks have a slightly different prayer rule as far as attending the divine services than the seminarians do. I couldn't tell you, unfortunately, exactly what it is. I believe midnight office, which is at 5 a.m., and compline, but I'm not sure. I'll have to get back to you on that. But regardless, they do pray with us. They eat the meals with us, and we're in church together every Saturday night and Sunday, at the very least. And so we see them all the time. We talk with them. They're oftentimes in between classes, we're getting coffee in the tipografia, and we see the monks in there. And so seminary has turned me into a coffee addict. I didn't really drink coffee all that much before, but now it's like, I get up and I'm like, yep, it's about that time. It's 8 o'clock, classes are starting. I need my coffee. I've got it right here, actually, in my signature Holy Trinity Monastery mug. But, so it's turned me into a coffee addict. And you see monks there every now and then, and they're, before they start going about with their obediences throughout the day. And they have several, whether it's working in the kitchen, whether it's working with the various different offices, like the financial office or with admin, something like that. A lot of them have obediences that coincide with life in the seminary. So this is generally how things work. And like I said, we interact with them all the time. They know our names, and we have a lot of time where we can spend with them and get to know them better. So.
And for anyone who's never been to a monastery before or spent like an extended time before, it's a very different way of living than in the secular world. Kind of like the entire day revolves around the services and the prayer life of the church. Could you describe that a little bit more for someone who's like never been in a monastery before? Like what exactly life is like there?
Yeah, I mean it's very intense. There's a lot of the services are at the very least available to you. All of them, rather. So you have the whole cycle of services throughout the day that you can attend. And, generally it's a pretty regimented life. So if you come here to visit, you are not exactly required in the same way that we are to do things. But, it's obviously kind of an unspoken rule, I would say, where you're going to the services, to all of them, and you're praying as much as possible and getting as much of a spiritual experience out of it as you can. So you wake up and you go to either midnight office at 5 or liturgy at 6. You go about your day after breakfast, which is right after liturgy, and probably you're helping the monks with something while you're here. They might ask you for assistance in some way, and then you go have lunch, help them a little bit more until Vespers. And as far as I'm aware for pilgrims, that's about when the day ends, is once Vespers hits. They go to Vespers, they go to Matins, and then the rest of the day is theirs. And we've had several pilgrims staying in the dormitory who have really enjoyed their experience. They get to talk with the seminarians and get to know us a little bit, and they get to talk with Father Theodore. They get to speak with Vladika, God willing, if he has the time, and they are able to gain something positive out of being here. But it's certainly not as intensive a lifestyle as being an actual monk here or as being a seminarian, but you still get that full range of services and all those opportunities to go and pray and spend time with God. So.
And you mentioned before, kind of priests, they mention like almost missing the life back at the monastery, back at the seminary. Obviously, life's very different if you're going to school, you're working. But if someone is, living in the world and they are looking to improve their prayer life, to sort of be more prayerful throughout the day, what advice would you give them to sort of incorporate the principles you've learned, like your regular everyday life?
So, well, first off, I'd like to say that generally speaking, go and ask your spiritual father
Of course,
about
of
what specifically you should do. For me personally, though, I can tell you, what I would say for what I hope to do is to have built up such a habit where prayer is a compulsive habit, and that should be our goal. Where we don't feel right, going about our day if we haven't started off with prayer. We don't feel right going to sleep if we haven't finished the day with prayer. Generally this is the attitude that we try to cultivate here, and this is, what the goal of every person should be, whether they're in seminary, whether they're a lay person, whether they're clergy. This is what appears to be, the ideal. So, I think that, talking to your spiritual father, getting that appropriate advice for what exactly you should be doing for a prayer rule, and then going based off of that, for me, talking to my spiritual father and getting my prayer rule has been very helpful, because then I feel like I've started off my day in the right way and I finish my day in the right way.
And outside of sort of like living the life of the daily services, that like life of prayer, outside of the services themselves, what would you say would be the most important thing you've learned at the seminary from like a life perspective?
Something Vladika said, when was it now? It was recently. I think it might have been, I think it was at the Feast of the Three Holy Hierarchs. He gave a little talk to the seminarians and the pilgrims. And he said that the minute that you start to let something slip in your spiritual life, the floodgates open. And I cannot express to you how much I've seen that hold true in my own life. You take one day off, and next thing you know, it becomes easier to take the next day off, and then the next day, and the next day, and then you're not praying, and then you're not reading scripture, and then you think, why should I be excuse me, why should I be going to church? And then you think, why should I be in seminary? Why am I here in the first place? And I'd be lying to you if I told you that those were not thoughts that once or twice in the past have happened to me and begun to drive me a little bit mad. And this is what happens when you allow your spiritual life to be relaxed, when you're not vigilant, when you don't understand the significance of and the necessity for prayer in your life. When you start, again, like Vladika said, that will stay with me forever, hearing that, because it is unbelievably true. Do not let those floodgates open. Stay vigilant and be as prayerful and watchful as possible, because Satan's going to find any opening he has, any opening whatsoever. I've experienced it personally, and I know others have. The minute you ease up and say, oh, I don't need to do my prayer roll tonight. I'm really tired, and I'm so full. I just had such a nice dinner, and I really want to sleep. I want to watch a little bit of a show and go to sleep. And it's in those moments. And what I struggle with personally, just saying no, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna pray, and then God willing, you are able to resist that temptation and hold fast for another day. But the war is every day. This is a struggle that we all have. It's spiritual warfare, unseen warfare. There's a book. People have mixed opinions on it. I've never read it, but that's what it is. That's what we all struggle with daily, is maintaining that life of prayer, and understanding that we can't give even an inch, can't give an inch to the evil one, because he'll take a mile, and next thing you know, you're just lost. And like I said, that's something that unfortunately I experienced my first year here, allowing myself to be distracted, and it's something that I will never let happen again. I can promise you that. I have now spent so much time recovering, and just now I'm starting to feel like, all right, I'm back to my nice little prayer rule, and remembering this necessity in my life. And so it takes a long time. You start to let things slip, next thing you know, it all just opens up. And so this is something where we as seminarians and as people in general have to be very watchful of.
And so you kind of touch on a bit with the talking about the spiritual life. What would you say is the most some of the most difficult struggles you faced as a seminarian? Either personally, you kind of touched on the personal life, the spiritual life, but sort of both the personal and spiritual, the interaction between the two.
That's a good question. A lot of it's very personal to me. A lot of very personal experiences, but like, do you mean what is the biggest struggle that I've had to, like,
Yes, yeah. some of the biggest struggles that you've had that you were able to kind of get through.
Yes. So, just distractions in general. I'll say it's so easy to be distracted by various different things, whether it's staying up late, and just sitting on your phone doing God knows what, whether it's, talking idly to people, all of this, it all adds in. But I think the biggest thing for me, and I know it's a temptation because historically this has not been an issue with me, is overcoming tiredness. And, just kind of willing myself to get up and say, I'm going to church, and willing myself to, stay up late and pray rather than do anything else, or at the very least pray and then do other things, right? It's okay. I'm going to pray, say my evening prayers, and then I can go and talk to whoever and kind of wind down for the night, whatever it might be. Having that discipline, though, to overcome these struggles of tiredness and of laziness, this general spirit of laziness, that has been my biggest struggle. And I think that obviously it's something I'm still working through. But, that coupled with just letting yourself get distracted in whatever way, it's so very easy. So very easy. You would think, coming to a monastery, there's no distractions here. I'm going to just pray, and I'm going to read, and I'm going to be like, those little ascetic monks that I see in those paintings, and life's going to be great. And then you get here and it's like, Satan's going to find something. Passions and temptations that you never thought you had, or that you thought you had long since overcome. And they're going to come rearing their heads. And if you're not prepared, you're gonna fall under. And this is something, speaking from personal experience and from other stories that I've heard from my friends. You've gotta overcome the laziness, overcome the tiredness, and just say to yourself, I'm gonna do my homework, I'm gonna pray, I am going to be the best seminarian that I can be. And having that motivation, remembering I'm here for a reason. I've been called here for whatever reason. God has called me here. I'm here. And I must do with this time what God desires for me to do and glorify his name in the best way possible. So just overcoming that. There's a meme that I saw, a couple of days ago. I posted it on my Instagram story, I think. It was like this guy who's in his bed, and he's like, I'm just so nice and warm, and my bed's so cozy, wozy, fuzzy, wuzzy. And then he screams into the camera. He's like, get up and go to the gym. And it's like, my motivation is, instead of get up and go to the gym, it's get up and go to liturgy, right? Get up and pray, because again, these are years you're not going to get back. And it's to take advantage of the services we have here. You know what? I don't care that I'm tired. I don't care that I'm hungry, that I didn't have dinner last night. I don't care. I'm going to church, and just having that sort of that drive that's got to be inside of you, that to inspire yourself and others around you. And when you see your fellow seminarians, if someone struggling with whatever it might be, church attendance or whatever, checking in. And that's one thing that I love about the community here, is we do that with each other. If we see someone who's struggling, it's like, hey, little knock on their door. Are you at church? It's been a couple days. Everything okay? What's going on? And being able to be close enough with pretty much everyone in the dormitory to have those conversations. That's critical to spiritual growth, is recognizing the interdependence of our salvation. And that's something that is special and unique to Jordanville, and an experience that I thank God for. And that I have friends here who care about me so deeply, and who want the best for me. And I care about them. It's like, we care about each other's spiritual lives and trying to work to get to heaven together, right? I mean, this is not some sort of thing where we're sequestered off in our rooms and living alone, and it's all, up to us, and we're going to be starving, and we're going to be, weak. And no, we have a wonderful community who they are willing to help us. And so that's been really wonderful. My struggle, yes, it's definitely been overcoming that laziness, overcoming that tiredness, and getting rid of distractions, just eliminating them in whatever way I can. And recognizing that my priority here is my spiritual life, then the academics, and, then the community, the friendships, and all of that. And kind of working with those three things these next 2 years that I have here, and utilizing my resources here to the best of my ability to make sure that my experience is glorifying God in the best way possible. So,
you mentioned before the helping one another out. I remember a priest once told me an analogy, sort of a relationship with God is like a point in the middle of a circle, and sort of like the closer you get to God, the circle closes in, you get closer with one another. And I think that's, important, the idea that it's good to be able to struggle with others.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's inspiring, and seeing everyone just in such a raw and straightforward way, because there's really not hiding anything when you're in the dormitory. You see everything, and this is it's really a powerful and beautiful experience, and just being able to help each other and say, look, you don't have to cover anything up with me. I'm struggling just the same way you are, and I want to help you. And I've had friends who have been just key in helping me in my spiritual life, and I can't thank them enough for that. So,
how would you say your time at seminary has impacted your worldview the most? Like how your perspective on life in general has changed the most since you've been at Holy Trinity?
Learning to let go. Many people know that I was very involved in the political scene before I came to seminary, and this is something that I still hold near and dear to my heart. I still check the news, probably more than I should, and I still read political theory. It's fascinating me. Right now I'm reading Richard Weaver and Ideas Have Consequences, which I've been working on for a couple months. I'm finishing it tonight. So I still love reading my political theory. I do, and I've read some incredible books over the last couple of years that have defined my worldview. But letting go and understanding that Christ wins in the end, and we can vote all we want, and we can talk about how we want the perfect leader to just come and save us from this hell. And we can sit around all day and talk about how if I were ruling things, it'd be different. If we just implement this political ideology, it's all gonna change. Bottom line is that this is a fallen world, and the bottom line is that we have a struggle here as Christians in this nation and around the world, and it's not perfect for any Orthodox Christian anywhere. And the bottom line is understanding that if we can't fix our own spiritual lives first, how can we ever hope to change the world? So letting go of these externals and understanding that before I hope to influence anyone else in that way, I need to make sure that I have cultivated a life of prayer and a spiritual life that makes me comfortable with who I am, where I stand with Christ, and then help others to reach that same goal. And that has to be the ultimate goal in our life, period. So understanding that, as much as we can talk about these based and red-pilled concepts, and it's so fun, are we in a position to cast stones at anyone? And so we have to keep our own spiritual lives in check and make sure that we are able to do a 10-minute prayer rule at the end of the night before we can sit here and say, look at these evil, disgusting politicians, and because that's something we all love to do. But before we can even hope to, we've got to be able to look inwards and say, are we in check as best as we can be? And as the old saying, pull the plank out of your own eye, or you look at the speck in your neighbor's. So that's something where we've got to work on ourselves, on our own spiritual life before we can criticize anything or anyone else, and make sure that we're kept in check constantly. So letting go of those externals has been my struggle. But I read this past summer Father George Calciu, his book. It's an old book. It's out of print now. There's a new version of it, but the book is Christ is Calling You, and it's a book that I recommend. By the way, I recommend it to anyone considering seminary. Christ is Calling You by Father George Calciu. The new book is called. It's a little bit thicker. It's got Christ is Calling You in there, and it's got a couple other writings of Father George's interviews, talks, and homilies. And the book is called Father George Calciu Interviews, Homilies, and Talks. I think that's the name of the book. And so it's a little more expanded. But anyone who's considering seminary, or lay people in general, read it. That's what I can tell you, because that helped me to realize, that these things don't matter if our spiritual life isn't in check. And Father George had a spiritual life like no one else. My Yagam Papu, my Greek grandmother and grandfather knew him, and so did my mother. And he lived very close to my house. And his church is still there. And he has been such an inspiration for me because, he was involved in some political movements in Romania, and his main philosophy was truth before peace. And that's something that I hold near and dear to my heart, and something that I've had to realize over the past year. It's been about a year now, a little bit less maybe, that I've had to understand, what does that mean? It's not just, it's not just I want to be comfortable and I want to, this sort of spoiled child psychology. Let that go and understand that before there can be peace, before any sort of peace can be maintained, it must be a peace that is preserved in truth. And this is something that Father George talked about. And it starts off with your own spiritual life and keeping that in check, which is what I've been trying to kind of drive home through this whole interview. And so read Interviews, Homilies, and Talks by Father George Calciu, anyone, especially anyone considering seminary, and it will change your life. Read Father George, and his belief system has really helped to formulate mine. And he's very near and dear to my heart. So...
And you mentioned that that's a good book for someone considering seminary or maybe aspirations for the priesthood. Would you have any other advice for someone who is perhaps saying, I feel really drawn to seminary at the moment?
Yes, pray. Pray and talk to your spiritual father. That's it's got to be something that's done with the spirit of discernment. It's not something that's just going to say, hey, willy-nilly, I'm going to seminary, and I like the aesthetics. Vestments look cool. I think I'll look cool in a cassock. That's not what it's about. It's about understanding the gravity of what we're doing here. And understanding that this is something that could benefit your spiritual life, that should benefit your spiritual life. And I think that if you can grasp that, if your spiritual father thinks that it's something that will benefit you in the spiritual life, they're going to recommend you to come here. So, this is definitely talk it over with your spiritual father, and definitely pray about it, and pray for the spirit of discernment. That's something that's been key in my life. So,
this might not be something that considering you're still second year, but what would the transition from seminarian to parish priest look like? That sort of process, if you're aware of it.
Oof, that's a good question. That would be a question for a parish priest. It's so different. It varies from parish to parish, and it varies based on jurisdiction. We're specifically here, seminarians are being trained for parish life in a row course setting. If you go to Hellenic College / Holy Cross, you're being trained for parish life in a GOA setting. If you go to St. Tikhon's or St. Vlad's, you're being trained for an OCA or an Antiochian setting, respectively. So, this is kind of the difference. There's also Libertyville for Serbs, but I hear you have to speak Serbian fluently to go there. But this is this transition is something that I'm sure it's difficult for a lot of men, and you end up, God willing, you have a wife and kids by that point, and so balancing all of that, I can imagine it's a struggle. Father Peter James, he was a seminarian here last year who graduated, very good friend of my family's, and he ended up. He's now a parish priest, and he's got one kid, I believe with a second on the way. And I haven't talked to him recently. It's been a couple months, but I can imagine that it's a real struggle. It's something that is tough to get used to. So it's a lifestyle that's tough to adjust to. Especially you come from the dormitory life here. You got guys being dudes, and and it's lovely in its own way. But it's not married life, So, so I don't know. I think that it's definitely I'm sure it's a real struggle, but you'd have to ask one of them.
And at seminary, sort of looking at Orthodoxy, the church in general, at large, in America specifically, I would say there's definitely a different perception via, just a layman versus when you're actually in the seminary and you get kind of like a different perspective on things. What would you say, from like a lay perspective, are the biggest issues sort of facing Orthodox Christians today, and in what ways, like, a layman could address, either at a parish life or personal life? I know you kind of really hammer in about faith, the prayer life. Make sure you have that before you sort of have any grand aspirations for anything else.
Yes, that's true. Biggest issues facing lay Orthodox Christians today. I'm going to be honest. Twitter, I think, is number one. Number one on that list. I myself am included in that. It's such a time waster, and it's such a oh my gosh, you can just get caught up in having all of these, frankly, worthless discussions, and just you end up posting very silly memes, and to get a reaction, it's to get a laugh, and especially if you have an anonymous account on there, you can get pretty silly pretty easily. And so I think that Twitter is dangerous. I think that it harms your spiritual life, and something that I need to get off of, honestly. But I think that it can be beneficial in its own way. It's a matter of using it in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, I don't see much, in ways of how Twitter helps the spiritual life. But, I think the biggest thing to remember is to keep to understand your position in the church, and that you are in the church to help out, to help your priest in any way possible, to help your bishop in any way possible. And you're not there to theologize. And that's something that as seminarians, a lot of us, we come in here and we're like, I know everything, and I'm just a genius, and, I'm going to just cruise through classes. And you don't, because that's not what life here is like. But, this is a plague that many lay people have to deal with, too, is we think way more highly of ourselves than we actually should. And so we need to understand that our number one goal in parish life is servitude. It's asking your priest, what can I do to help? How can I serve? Can I sing? Do you need me before services, after services? Can I clean up the church? Can I start a brotherhood at my church? All of these sorts of things help your priest, and they help to cultivate the Orthodox spiritual life in the best way possible at your home parish. So, if you're not doing that, if you're just sitting here reading a bunch of books, then what's it all for? Do you understand the message behind those books, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the key to remember when we're dealing with parish life as lay people.
And especially with online, I think a lot of times people's first either impression or their first sort of the hook that grabs them to orthodoxy is, something posted online. They're like, I'm kind of familiar with Protestants, Roman Catholics, but orthodoxy is just here. And I think we've all seen sort of a growing interest in orthodoxy, especially in America, the last decade, 2 decades or so. So for people who are inquiring about the faith or still new to it, I know you just mentioned the idea of helping your priest, being that sort of active participant in the parish life. But what advice would you give to someone who is still inquiring, still new to it, and things to avoid?
Twitter. No, but I think that's a good question. Since I never had that experience of coming to faith, it's something I was brought up in. My answer is going to differ probably from what most people would have to say. I think that the best thing is to avoid idle discussion and argumentation. Because it's gonna lead to negative feelings and anger and resentment, and nothing good comes from that. I would advise to sit back and watch and read what your spiritual father recommends for you to read, and go from there. And then, through cultivating a life of prayer, a life of servitude, and a good reading habit, God willing, you'll be still on the right path. And that's what we hope to achieve here at seminary as well, in much the same way. So.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's easy to get caught up in sort of the arguments, the arguments, the meme culture, the online, which is wholly different than, what you would experience when you're actually attending a parish. And you're physically making yourself a presence there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a whole different show,
And then just one more question. I think we'll switch to see if anyone else has questions from the chat. Sure. Would you say there are any stories or anecdotes from your time at Jordanville that you would like to share? Just sort of anything else you want to kind of throw out there?
Oh, yes. I think there are a lot of stories. There's always a new story. Every day, there's always a new story. There's always something going on. But I think one of the coolest experiences that I've had here has been Clean Week, and we're obviously approaching that next week. The services are beautiful. It's the balanda goes off at 4:30 in the morning, and we're in church at 5, and we don't leave church until about 9:15 for like a 10-minute break, and then we're back in church from 9:25, 9:30 until 12:30, 1 p.m. And we have the hours, we have vespers, we have matins, we have on Wednesday and Friday we pre-sanctified liturgy, and then we go back. We have a break from 12:31 until 6 p.m. where we go back for the Great Canon of Repentance of St. Andrew of Crete, which is just it's tear-jerking. It's tear-jerking because you remember your sin, right? And just the struggle, and it brings it all back to the forefront of your mind for Lent. And going to these services and sharing that experience with my brothers last year was incredible, and I can't wait for it this year, frankly. But that's an experience that even if you're not planning on being a seminarian or a monastic here, come and experience it. You just got to come and see. That's the bottom line. I recommend everyone should come and experience Clean Week at least once a year. Same with Holy Week. Obviously, the services are incredible. But outside of church and everything, we like to do our fun things and have our fun times together. We do campfires every now and then, which is really nice. There's a little spot next to one of the little ponds back here. I hesitate to call it a lake. A lot of us call it a lake. It's a pond. But we have little campfires every now and then, and we all hang out. We sing Russian folk songs, and we have some food, some soda, things like that, and it's just really a great time and a great atmosphere. People from the community come, and obviously this is in the warmer months generally, not in the dead of winter like right now. But sometimes we've even a month ago we had a little bonfire. It was a nice time. So it's always a good experience, and just like meeting people from around the community, spending time with your friends, and having that fellowship is very important. And so we've had some great times there. We can get blessings to leave the monastery grounds for a day. Me and my friend group, we've gone to Syracuse a couple of times, gone to the mall there, kind of get food, just go hang out, have a good time. And then we have a curfew, 10 p.m. every night. But we go out for the day, and we have a good time, and we build that fellowship that's so important for every young man to have in his life, is to have that sense of fellowship and camaraderie with others. And so that's been really wonderful. But other anecdotes, just kind of little things that I see from Vladika. He's a very incredible man, and a very wonderful abbot and bishop. And he just has little things, little habits that he says and does that, where you can tell that he's watching everyone, and he's very intuitive. And he has been highly influential in my life. And, he's inspired me to continue here. He's inspired me to be the best seminarian that I can be, like I was talking about earlier. And I think that, there was a story once of him. This is a story I heard from someone. I don't know where I heard it, but so I'm not even entirely sure if it's true. I think it is, and I like to believe it is. This is something that would happen. But there was a bear that was kind of like walking the grounds. We had bears up here, and it was kind of, people were like, "Oh, there's a bear! What are we gonna do?" Well, Dick went up to it and spoke to it, in Russian, and he told it, to go away, and the bear climbed up a tree. And he said, "No." I said, "Away." And the bear ran down the tree and ran back into the woods. So I heard that from someone, and I don't, God forgive me if that was wrong, but that was one story that I like, that I think about. I'm like, I could see it happening. But just so, he's very very relaxed, and he just has this demeanor where everything's going to be okay. And he always says, "Nothing surprises me." Nothing surprises me, he always says, and it's true. He hears it all. And so having something like that happen, I wouldn't be one bit surprised. Just saying, "Go away, bear, leave." I can picture it. I can see it happen. But he's a wonderful man, a very spiritual man, and it's been excellent to be under his guidance since I've been here. So
yeah, that's amazing. It sounds like it's like a whole new world when you go there, like a slice of heaven, like a little preview.
Right. That's what it feels like. The services are just incredible. The services do feel like heaven on earth.
All right. All right. So I think I'll see if anyone else has any more questions for you. So, okay, got one from Derek. He says, "Can't thank Luke enough for Orthodoxy First. Feels like the last episode was yesterday. Helped me on my journey to the church so much. Good luck with the rest of your schooling, brother."
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank God.
This one's from Nick. No question, but thanks for putting this interview together. Hey, this is mostly Luke's star of the show today.
Oh, no.
I'm glad to be able
This
to
is
host
wonderful.
this. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's been great. It's been great.
All right. And this one's from Kathy Kendrat. God be with you. Please keep me and your family in your prayers.
Of course, Mama. Thanks. Of course.
And then, let's see, this one's from Savardis. Luke, you're really good at speaking. Do you take a particular interest in homiletics? Also, TGD.
TGD.
Total Gravantis
Oh,
death.
total God. Let's go. No, yes, I do. I do take an interest in homiletics. I was just telling a friend of mine last night. I was on the phone with her, and I told her, I said, I believe, I like to think that I can captivate an audience, and I was like, there are two ways that I could take this. I could either become a politician, or I could give fire homilies someday. And, who knows? Whatever God has in mind. But yes, I do take an interest in homiletics. That's a fourth-year class, and I'm very excited to take it.
Awesome. So this one's from Reagan Lodge. No question, just a mega shout out of encouragement to Luke for being an inspiration. You've come such a long way. Can't wait to see where your epic faith journey takes you.
Oh, thank God. Thank you, Reagan Lodge. Appreciate it, man. Miss talking to you.
Let's see. We'll see if there's any that came in the regular chat. Oh, so someone had a question about the sort of age ranges of the seminarians. What would you say is the youngest limit, and then sort of like the oldest seminarian you've seen, just to kind of get like a basic sense of
Sure,
the age ranges?
All over the place. We have one seminarian who's 17, and a young guy, and he's a great kid. I love talking to him. And then we have, last year we had one who unfortunately had to temporarily drop out. God willing, he'll be back next year. He was 56, I think. And he was in the master's program. But no, it's all over the place. I'd say the majority of us are typical college age. We're between 18 and 27. We got a couple of boomers here, a couple of 30-year-olds and above. They've really hit the ball. But I'm just kidding. But we do have a couple of them who are on the older side, a couple of them in their 30s. But generally speaking, we're in our late teens to mid 20s.
Okay, very nice. Someone said you look Turkish. Don't know how you're going to take that one.
Not well. I'm going to go work out after this and take out my frustration. And then I'll pray for him.
This one's from Borjomi Drinker. Can't stay for the whole thing. Wanted to ask what seminary is like for married seminarians. Also, what the admissions process is like.
For married seminarians?
Yes.
Sorry, say it again. You said the...
Yeah, he was just kind of how seminary is like for married seminarians. And if the admissions process is any different.
I'm not entirely sure. Forgive me, I'd have to get back to you on that. From what I can tell, they, number one, they are not required to the same obediences as we are. We all have a work study program, and we do something, which there is a Jordanville podcast in the works, by the way, which I will be involved in to some degree. But we all have our obediences, our work studies, and they're not held by the same restrictions as far as church services go and as far as obediences and work study. But other than that, I'm not sure. They live separately from us if they're married. We have married housing. I don't know exactly what that process is like, though, because I don't plan on getting married anytime soon. But, I'd have to get back to you on that one.
Cool. And then this one's from Father John Whiteford. How many seminarians are currently in the seminary? What percentage are converts?
Good question. We have, I believe it's 36 seminarians right
Okay.
now, somewhere right around there. And converts, a lot. There are a lot of converts, and it's really wonderful to see that. There's a bit of a different dynamic, I would say, between the cradles and the converts, but it's not like a weird thing. It's just kind of, the way that they came to the faith. It's very different than any experience that any of us have had. And it's always wonderful to hear their stories. One seminarian in particular, Olaf, he's got a great story of how he came, and it's encouraging to me. It's very inspiring. And but I would say, yeah, it's probably a few more cradles than converts, but not all that much. And I'm trying to think now. Maybe it's like 60-40, something like that. But yeah, it's not all too much of a difference. And the more time goes on in America, it's going to be more and more converts, which is beautiful to see. So.
All right. And then this one's from David Urin. Don't know if Luke went into this, but what's the average curriculum of a seminary, and what was the most unexpected aspects of it for him? Much love to Luke.
Hey, David, thank you. I appreciate it, man. Good to hear from you. Yeah, so, the average curriculum, I kind of mentioned, we have first year, we've got our Russian and Slavonic, we have our Intro to Theology, our English, very basic sort of gen ed type of classes. And then as you move on, this year I have your church history, again, Russian and Slavonic, and this is my last year of Russian and Slavonic. Next year, Russian becomes an elective, and Slavonic is no more. So I will take third year Russian. That's my plan. We have this year a little more intense courses, so we get more involved with church history. Liturgics is a little bit more intense, training us to be first on Kleros. And along with that, we are taking choir, and it's expected by our second year that we're kind of able to lead our section, which I'm a second tenor in the choir, and the other second tenor is a third year. He's got a beautiful voice, and so we kind of work on that together. And also like Old Testament scripture classes. So this is my second semester of Old Testament this year, so we're going over the Old Testament prophets. Then third year, you have church history, you have dogmatics, philosophy, Russian literature, and so it becomes a little bit more of an intense, like philosophical, true theological education your third year, more serious, which is a typical college structure. You have your gen eds, and then you kind of get more focused as time goes on, and more specific. And then fourth year, you have homiletics, you have pastoral theology, you have liturgical theology, and it gets really intense, and it all culminates there in your comprehensives at the end of the year, where you have to be proficient in Russian and in Slavonic. You have to be able to set up a service from scratch. You have to basically display that you have taken advantage of these past 4 years or 3 years as a master's student. So.
Very nice. This is from Leo Mora. I went to church for the first time last Sunday. Luke was one of my influences. Thanks.
Oh, thank God. Thank God. Thank God, Leo. It's good to hear, man. Thank God.
And then this one is from World War Now. What's the best Russian food that you've had?
Look. I'm Greek. I grew up with my mother's incredible Greek cooking. And pirushki. I like pirushki. Yeah.
What is that for those who are unaware?
It's like, those little like meat-filled pies, whatever it is. They sell them in stores, I think. Yeah, they're good. They're good. But we have gadobita in the Greek culture, and it's better. And most Greek cuisine is just far superior. But yeah, I love Greek food. Russian food, I just don't. Sorry, I don't get into it. I just don't. And one of that third year second tenor who I was just mentioning, he is a phenomenal cook, and he cooks all the time for the seminarians, and he also bakes and everything, and he made some baklava. He makes pretty frequently actually baklava, which, to mess with me, he insists that it's Turkish and Lebanese, which it's not. Frankly, it's not. And Lebanese make it with pistachios, which is disgusting. But he makes it. He makes it well, although he refuses to admit that it's Greek, but it is. But no, I'm just not too much of a fan of Russian cuisine in general. I'm a Greek cuisine supremacist. I'll put it that way. So.
Cheese at Zoomer says med food is greater than everything else.
Real. It's all real.
He also asks, how many seminarians already have a college degree? Do they go straight to the master's program?
Yes, if you have a college degree, generally speaking, you go straight to the master's program. There's one seminarian who's doing a second bachelor's. He already has one from another institution, but he wanted to come here for the full formation process, the 6 to 7 years, which I completely understand. And but generally, if you have a separate degree, bachelor's degree, you go straight into the master's program. So, and yes, there are several seminarians who are like that.
All right. Another question from David Aaron. Thanks, Luke, for asking the question. Final question. How much did Med White Boost help you in your church history classes, etc.?
Oh, so much. There are times where I have to watch it because my Father Daniel, one thing, he doesn't like online orthodoxy at all, which I completely understand. So I have to be careful mentioning these people because he knows these names. And so I'm just kind of like, I watched this video one time and he's just goes on a rant about how much he hates internet orthodoxy. So I've got to watch it. Have they been helpful? Absolutely. Will I admit it around here? Probably not.
Father John Weifer says, there are 4 food groups in Russian cuisine: soup, bread, cabbage, and potatoes.
Absolutely true.
Let's see, AZ Florence says, Luke, will you take back Constantinople?
Inshallah.
All right. And I think that's, if no one has any other ones, let me just double check. All right. If anyone has any other last questions, they can submit it now. Otherwise, it was great talking with you again, Luke. I'm so glad you were able to come on. This was very awesome.
Thank God. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for coming on. Let's see. Vibe Man, Luke, have you ever visited any Turkish Orthodox sites?
I have not. Someday I'll make my way over to Turkey and check it out. But no, I have not at all.
Oh, I think this one's probably up your alley. So Steven Chavez says, hey, Luke, any tips for a Gym Bros diet going into Great Lent? First Lent, and I'm terrified.
Beans, peanut butter, and shrimp are going to be your best friends with some rice mixed in there. It's not going to be very diverse. Have your fruits and veggies, but that's going to be your best bet. Just as much as you can. It's something that I'm actually going to try and figure out more so this Lent. Kind of getting into what exactly I'm going to do to keep my gains because I'm nervous. I'm gonna, start get back on that bench on Pascha and struggle with 100 pounds on the bar. So we'll see. But as time goes on, God willing, I'll have more of a solid answer. But yeah, beans, shrimp, peanut butter, some rice, your fruits and veggies. Those are going to be your best bet for protein. And yeah.
All right, and I think this will probably be a good one to end it. Metropolite says, Luke, it's almost curfew. Get back over here to the dorm.
Yeah. Okay. We still got an hour and a half.
All right, so I think that about wraps it up. So, once again, thank you, Luke, for coming on. This has been a great time. I really enjoyed it.
Likewise, it was wonderful. Thanks again for having me on.
All right, so thanks again to Luke. Thanks for everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you guys later.
Bye-bye.